This is a mini lesson on compound inequalities, which is now a challenge topic for Unit 1. A compound inequality is two or more inequalities joined together by an and or an or statement. We know that a compound in general is something that's composed of more than one thing. So in science, you've learned about something that is made of more than one separate element. In math, when you see the word and, it means both things must be true. When you see the word or, it means one or the other or both can be true. So this first graph that we see here is showing two rays. One is showing x less than 2, and one is showing x greater than or equal to 4. And so we would write x is less than 2 or x is greater than or equal to 4. It's not and because we know there is no number that is both less than 2 and greater than or equal to 4. We have to have the word or here in order to have the correct answer. Versus this next graph, we see that two things are true. We don't have all the values that are greater than or equal to negative 18 because we actually stop when we reach 6. So we need our values to be between negative 18 and 6. So you can write x is greater than or equal to negative 18 and x is less than 6, and with the word and this is a way to correctly write this inequality. Or you can write it as one big inequality. So negative 18 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 6. So if you plug a number in there, so let's say, for example, you plugged in the number 0, that would be true. Negative 18 is less than or equal to 0, which is less than 6. So we either use the word and here, or we can write it as one big compound inequality. Notice that these are facing the same direction as each other. And I am paying attention to my closed circles versus my open circles. When we solve, we're going to solve the same way we would normally solve inequalities, except we're doing it to all three sections. So in this case, I would first add 1 to all three sections. So 6 is less than negative 3x, which is less than or equal to 15. And then I would divide by negative 3. Remembering that since I'm dividing by a negative, these inequality symbols are going to flip or reverse. So I have negative 2 is greater than x is greater than or equal to negative 5. If you got an inequality that did not make sense here, then you'd have no solution. But in this case, it does make sense because negative 5 is less than or equal to, let's say, negative 4 or negative 3 or some fractions and decimals in there. And this is equivalent to us saying x is less than negative 2 and x is greater than or equal to negative 5. Some people might choose at the start to instead use a different method where they would split this. So they'd have 5 is less than negative 3x minus 1. And separately, they would have negative 3x minus 1 is less than or equal to 14. If you prefer to do that, if you think you're more likely to remember to flip your inequality symbols, then by all means do that. In the next one, we have an or statement. We already know that x is greater than or equal to 0, so that doesn't really change at all. And then we need to solve the second inequality here. So we have 1/2 x is less than negative 4, multiplied by 2, so we get x is less than negative 8. So our final answer is x is greater than or equal to 0 or x is less than negative 8. Notice that on this it did say solve and graph, and I did not graph the other one. So let's do that. So we would have negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2. And we want all the values between these. And then we want in a closed circle at negative 5. Over on this other one, we have negative 8, negative 4, 0 here. So x is greater than or equal to 0, or x is less than negative 8. I like to think of or statements like oars on a boat going in opposite directions as like a way to remember it. And let's see like where we would see this. So this says take the statement and write a compound inequality. Students at Needham High School are at least 13 years old and at most 19 years old, with a few exceptions. But basically, we know that the low end here is 13 and the high end here is 19. So we'd say 13 is less than or equal to x. And in this case, we would define x as the age of students. And that's less than or equal to 19. or we could write it as an and statement where we would literally use the word and.